And that was the biggest thing that is continuing to serve us well, not just when I was out, but just as a good business practice, is have everything documented. And it seems overkill at first, just from a day-to-day perspective, but then when you actually need it, you're like, oh man, I'm so glad we had that.
Welcome to another episode of Aleph Ventures TV, joined by my brother Matt Kuyper. Matt, hey buddy, how we doing?
Hey, we almost could be brothers, the Dutch brothers, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, man. Thanks for making some time. Excited to jump into our conversation today. But let's just start. Folks who don't know you, or maybe know a little bit, maybe just give me a little background, who you are, how you are in the painting business, what your business is. Give us a little background.
Well, I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know why I'm still here. No, just kidding. Matt Kuyper, Harpeth Painting. We're out of Nashville, Tennessee. We are split pretty equally, commercial and residential. It goes maybe 60-40 one year and 40-60 the next year. We will do, to be determined, but probably 11 to 12 million this year. And we've been in business for 7 years, have a team of about 12 here in the office, and run close to 80 or 90 guys in the field. So got away from us pretty quick, but it's been a fun journey.
That's awesome, man. We'll dig in more to that. You're a family man as well. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, so most importantly, most of you probably know Maggie rather than me. She runs this show over here. Very involved with PCA, Women in Paint, board of directors things. Couldn't do this without her. And then I have 3 young kids. Well, growing up, I've got a teenager now. Just within the last week, I've got a 13-year-old, 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old. The youngest is a boy. So they are pretty much the reason we're doing this.
I love it, man. I didn't know the detail of your layout to the kids. I'm the baby in my family, and I have 2 older sisters. So maybe he and I can connect with him sometime and give him some pointers on navigating. Hey, that's great, man. Well, really what today this conversation, obviously oftentimes on here we're talking shop. All of here we run painting businesses where that's what we do day in, day out. And so talking about that, today may be a little bit different, but I think, even more foundational to what we're after in building these businesses, running these businesses. I want to talk to you about in light of a pretty interesting year that you just had. And so, one of the things as the painting industry has professionalized, a lot of the focus is on, stabilizing the business. And one of the, kind of frameworks, or, it's said kind of tongue in cheek of, how to think about that is the turkey truck test, right? This is something that our mutual friend Nick Slavic likes to throw out there, talk about. A lot of people do, and I think for good reason. And, the turkey truck test, hey, if something happened to me, what would happen to my business? And you had a real life encounter with the turkey truck test in the past year. So maybe do you just want to introduce folks listening, give a quick overview of what you've dealt with health-wise this year?
Yeah, it's really timely that we're doing this podcast today, because I think it was actually this weekend or next weekend is the 1 year of my diagnosis. So last year I was having some weird stomach pains and got to the point where I was like, this could be appendicitis or gallbladder or something. So I went to the emergency room. They did some testing, and finally an MRI scan showed that I had a enlarged spleen, like 3 times as large as it should be. So that's where that discomfort and pain was coming from. So 3 days of blood tests later and some other testing, they had diagnosed me with hairy cell leukemia, which is a rare type of blood cancer. So that was kind of a surprise at 39 years old to be hearing the word cancer. And the kind of the the mental space that I was in at that time was not, oh, I'm gonna die, or oh, this sucks for my family. It's like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to be sick. Like this isn't my plan.
Yeah. Well,
So
how about that? Like, so maybe bring us into like kind of the maybe like the time leading up to that, and I looked back on my text with you, and I think it was September 23rd. We're recording this on September 20th.
yeah,
That I shot a text, "Hey brother, praying for you," and I think you had just posted, and you were in the hospital trying to
yeah.
figure
So
stuff out.
it
So
was,
yeah,
yeah, this weekend. Yeah.
yeah. So what maybe too like what and if we look back a year, what were you doing in your business? What role were you playing? Kind of what did life look like leading up to the diagnosis?
Yeah, so in hindsight, there was a lot more clarity in this. I had kind of been, so two things. Over the last 3 years, Maggie has really been taking over the CEO, the true, or more like a president. We call her CEO, but it's a very operational president role that she's in, which she is much better at than I ever was. So that was one of my transitions out of the day to day. Now, unfortunately, that's still in our household, which isn't ideal other than for the income portion of it. But my role became more less direct at that time. I was still doing some commercial estimating, some business development, but I didn't really have a key P&L role at that time. It was more coaching some of the younger guys that were coming in. I had hired an experienced commercial estimator and project manager about 6 months prior to going in the hospital, so that was huge looking back, like just the timing of that. But over the years, we have been putting in place a plan to have the business be sustainable without me first, and then now we're working on Maggie's transition as well. So really going into the hospital, I had full faith that my team was going to be able to pick up where I had left off and be able to run with what needed to be run with very little input from me. It just happened in more of a crash course, quicker succession than what I had originally planned. It was kind of the ultimate stress test of your business about 3 weeks into that.
Yeah, totally. And what kind of time frame here to just I'm curious of you start having some symptoms to like you have some clarity of what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, so it was about 3 days to get the diagnosis,
Okay.
and I was in the hospital for the first week or so full time, and then they start chemo pretty quickly. So my first week of chemo was every day, and that was pretty intense. Again, I was pretty much out of it for that week, and then subsequently got a really bad infection because the chemo kills everything, good and bad. So I was susceptible to just various bugs. So that put me back in the hospital in quarantine for another 5 days. And then I kind of had a little bit of a recovery time where they let your body kind of work back up. So that was 4 weeks where I was feeling generally pretty good. Work from home, was able to do emails and phone calls and things like that. And then started my next round of chemo, which was on Mondays every day or once a week. So it was like Monday through Wednesday or Thursday, pretty much down for the count. And then weekends, I was feeling a little more like a human, and then was wrapped up by Christmas. And then had about a 3 month recovery from that. So it was really about an 8 month, fairly quick journey considering, comparisons of cancers that people go through.
Yeah, I mean, as you talk about it, it sounds like, oh, this was like a course that I kind of went through or a certificate. It's like I went to this,
Yeah.
but maybe bring us in. Like you made a quick mention of it. Like what did kind of come to mind? What were some of the initial thoughts? What were some of how did you internalize that as that was going on early on?
Yeah, I am not a person who likes to give up control or let others do things for me. And that was the lesson I had to learn first. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this stuff. I'm not going to be able to take care of the normal things I would take care of. I had to ask for help with things. I had to let people serve me, and I didn't like that at all. Still don't like it. Not just in business, but in life too. Just household stuff, getting kids around, food. I'm a very active dad as far as like helping around the house, doing kids stuff, doing chores, laundry, dishes. That I'm I wouldn't say it's atypical, but I'm very involved with that, and I wasn't able to do a lot of that stuff. So that was a hard mental shift, not just in business but at home too.
Yeah. Well, as it relates to the business, what were some of the initial thoughts that came to your mind, or maybe too, like how did it affect you from a business standpoint?
So I was more worried than what actually ended up happening. My team, again, really stepped up. There was very little that fell through the cracks. I was able to stay up with email and phone calls and things like that, but as far as coming to the office or going to job sites or really being the guy, the motivator, the make stuff happen guy, it was more like I was in the sidelines just making sure everything was going okay. And again, it's because I think we had been working up to that point. It really just threw everybody in a little bit quicker, and it was a huge burden on Maggie, but the rest of my team, took a lot of that on too, and really didn't miss a beat.
That's great, man. And yeah, maybe just some of the balancing of, I don't know, how did you prioritize maybe like during that time of you have, and in your guys' case, your business is like a family affair where, your wife is carrying the business. Obviously she cares about you. You have kids. The business needs to go on. Just how did you think about, all right, how much time should I spend on this, or should I exert myself? I don't know if you had any like energy restrictions, or like you were thinking through that, but just balancing it all during that initial phase.
Yeah, it was a lot of give and take and come and go based on how I was feeling. And I almost feel bad for Maggie and for my team a little bit, because I would be totally MIA for a while, and then I'd be feeling good and I'd want to like swoop back in, and then I was gone again and in and out, and I'm assuming that was probably a little troublesome for my team. I haven't really
Sure.
asked them, but
Yeah, man. And so you mentioned about an 8-month journey. Maybe give us an update, like where do things stand today? And yeah, like how are things today?
yeah, full recovery. The unfortunate thing about this type of leukemia is it never really fully goes away. It just basically stays dormant, and it may be gone for 20 years, may be gone for 5 years, may never come back, but it's still one of those that's in my I guess in my bone marrow. But we just get blood work every 3 to 6 months and keep an eye on it. And as far as health and energy, I'm as close to 100% as one can feel.
Yes, and for those, most people probably know, but you like to get in the weight room a little bit here and there.
A little bit here and there, yeah.
And yeah, you're quite an active human.
Yeah,
And
still working that back up just a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, man, I'd be really curious, and this is what I want to, which, man, so grateful for the recovery. And like you said, these stories, man, they vary so widely of people's experiences. And I think it's very interesting. I appreciate you being open to talk about it, because again, I think there's people talk about this, think about this, plan for this, but then it's almost like something you plan for but never comes, to some degree. So yeah, totally. So I'd just be curious, like during that time, and you were talking about this a little bit, do you feel like whenever there was like personal uncertainty, or like, yeah, maybe, like what were you grateful for in the business? What did you see like, oh, okay, that's why we did that? Or, kind of your team stepping up. Yeah, maybe just like, what did you think of how the business responded to the event?
Yeah, so we had done a lot of work on this over the last 2 or 3 years, and about 2 years ago we hired a director of operations, and part of his per year in the business was to systemize or systemize, I don't know which one it is, of making sure everything follows an SOP, a protocol, the information's all there. If somebody leaves, we just hire another person in their place, and we don't miss a beat. And some of our team get kind of frustrated with him when he's looking at Paint Scout and he's like, hey, this person doesn't have a cell phone in there. We need to make sure we have all this person's contact information, or this address is incomplete. And he's doing that because he knows when somebody's out or unavailable, we need to have all that information available to pick right back up and make sure nothing happens to that client. We have all the information. The nuances of that client are all documented. Nothing's in anybody's head anymore. It's all got to be on paper. And that was the biggest thing that is continuing to serve us well, not just when I was out, but just as a good business practice, is have everything documented. And it seems overkill at first, just from a day-to-day perspective, but then when you actually need it, you're like, oh man, I'm so glad we had that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what were, so like SOPs, were there things that maybe in the last 2 to 3 years you were like, do we really need this, or do we really need to make this step, that like whenever that happened, it was like, man, thank goodness we took that step?
Yeah, the one that was really hard, the residential world in general is a little bit easier to put SOPs on compared to the commercial world, especially in like our sales and business development side of commercial. That's such a relationship thing, and you deal with certain companies differently than you deal with other companies. And I was really pushing back on my team, like, hey, there's no way we can document some of this stuff, or there's no way to SOP these relationships that I built for 15 years. And we're still working on it, but it's become a lot better of what we expect to be documented, and just thinking outside the box of, yes, this can be SOP'd. There is a way to do it. Even if it's very informal, somebody can pick it up a whole lot easier than having zero information.
Yeah. And and is there, well, yeah, was there any moments too, or things that you looked at where it was like, wow, if we hadn't done this, if we didn't do that, like this could have been a lot worse?
Yeah. We've spent a lot of time developing our scheduling system, which is very unique to us. A lot of people don't understand how we're doing it, but it works really good for us. And that's something too that Eric, our director of operations, has really stepped in with Maggie. And I can get a snapshot of all of our production happening from anywhere in the world, of what jobs are going on, crew size, scope of work, job costing, all that stuff I can get from anywhere. And without having that in place, I would have felt really lost. And also, same thing with Paint Scout, of having a dashboard that, hey, I'm not going to our meetings anymore, but I can check in and see how our sales team is doing, what our backlog looks like, what our bid hit ratio is. Basically having good dashboards really, it didn't change what I did at all, but it gave me comfort to know that things were running correctly.
Totally, man. I think that's so important as a business matures, it's kind of like, what's the shareholder look at this company a little bit? Like, can I clearly, from a shareholder standpoint, can I get my arms wrapped around this business to understand, okay, are we on track? Are we off track? How are things going? It's so important to have that.
Almost
kind of look.
Never, I think most people, especially in small business, their metric is what their bank account is. They're always looking at their bank account. That's a lagging indicator. I can't even actually tell you the last time I've looked at our bank account. It doesn't serve me anything. I'd much rather look at what job costing is, what our sales ratios are, what our backlog is. Those things are much more important to me.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I think the reason people look at that is because, on Friday, that's maybe the most relevant thing to them. But, that's where they are. That's how they're living their life, is like whatever the bank account is my reality. I'd be curious for you going back to just how you intentionally built your business. How did you get out of that reality where you started to, because I think a lot of this is like focus. It's like if you always focus on that, you're not going to think for, okay, what are the other KPIs that actually tell me how my business is doing, that I can build on and whatnot. But yeah, like how did you start to build the foundation of having a stabilized business?
Yeah, so one of the things I value in my life personally and in business is I operate well with a lot of margin. So when I don't like to be scheduled back to back to back, just hammer, 60 hours a week without any margin. I work much better when I have, 25% of my time that's just floater time. And I carry that over to my finances as well. I just sleep better knowing that I have that little bit of margin financially. So that was from day one really important to me. And the way I started the business was kind of a side project. And for a year, I just stuck cash away, didn't pay myself anything because I had a day job. And that really was a great way to bootstrap the business and continue to just have that mindset as we grew and never got over our skis. We've all of us have been to a point where we've relied on lines of credit for certain reasons, but that's not the way I would normally approach things. And as soon as you can get away from that, the better. And building in that recession-proof balance of whatever your metric is of 3 to 6 months of expenses or a year, whatever makes you feel comfortable, allows us to make really smart decisions.
What were some of your early experiences of like handing things off? So you mentioned earlier, like with the SOPs, that maybe you've been challenged in the last, recently of things that you thought, hey, this can't be SOP'd. It's just too complex to like, maybe I should question that premise. I'd be curious what were some of the early things that you had to give up control over? And how did you balance that? Like, I know that this is good for the long-term stability of my business, but man, this is really uncomfortable or scary or, right now.
Yeah. So I've pretty much held every role in my company at some point other than no, I really have. Yeah. I've held every role. The earliest ones that you give up are the either project management or sales or both at the same time. And yes, you can have a sales process. It's important to have a sales process, but the way our projects are and the size and the relationships, you almost have to let the personality of your salesperson dictate how they sell. And that was hard for me at first because I do it a very different way than some of my team does. And I think at first I wanted them to do it my way, but my way doesn't work for them, for our type of clients. I would say for your average $5,000, $6,000 residential repaint company, there is more value in having a set sales process. But with some of the designer and higher end work that we do, it's much more relationship based and personality based. So that was hard to realize that at first, but now it's been liberating. Same thing with project management. I come from a more of the background of project management, have that skill, understand the process of painting a lot more than some of our newer PMs do, and just letting them learn and not expecting them to know everything on day one is frustrating and liberating at the same time.
Was there a moment whenever you started doing that where you remember like, wow, I don't have to do this, or like I get to not do this? Somebody else does this for me. I don't know if there was like was it gradual or
It was so gradual that
okay.
I don't think we never had that. It's more like let's see. One of our PMs had to go out for a family emergency a couple weeks ago, and I had to step in to like run some residential projects. And it's like, ooh, I'm a little rusty. Like, I need to prepare for this for tomorrow. I haven't done this in a couple years. So that's when it kind of hit me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. It's good to have those. Was there any like takeaways of like, all right, like were you like this is kind of fun, or were you like, I'm gonna make sure I don't have to do this again?
No, it was kind of fun, and yeah, I had fun with it.
That's good. Was there anything in going through that experience that made you think, oh, maybe we're not as buttoned up, in this area as I thought? Having something where, because I guess too, there's an element of during that time. Obviously, you were affected. Maggie was affected too. So in terms of where's her mind and energy and time, being spent. Did that uncover, or create more urgency of like, hey, we still have more to address in stabilizing the business?
Yeah, I think it showed more in a couple of our larger commercial projects. We were at the time doing, our largest project ever in Dayton, Ohio, and I was not able to keep as much of a pulse on that project as I probably should have or would have. And it was a successful project from a production standpoint. It was not financially successful. And I think I could have seen that quicker and addressed it if I would have been a little more vigilant in the day-to-day with that project specifically. But it was also a great learning experience for one of my young PMs to just do that and not have me to rely on as much. And I think it accelerated his career by about a year.
Yeah, that's cool. So is kind of going forward, are there like bigger projects that they're going to take on, or you guys just maybe feel a little bit more confident in their ability to run the show on those?
Yeah, just experience. He's got that under his belt now. We know what we did what do you call it when you, at the end of the project, post-project review kind of thing.
It's like a SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Post-mortem.
Yeah, post-mortem. That's what I was looking for. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah.
So we don't like to make mistakes twice, and I don't think we will.
That's great, man. I'd be curious to just, again, some of the maybe more reflective stuff of even too, like being a husband and a father. I'm a husband, I'm a father. I'm curious, like, is it, again, a unique experience? Any big reflections or takeaways? And I think maybe in particular business, like being in small business and engaged, was there any big takeaways, reflections on, the balancing act, the prioritization? What am I valuing? How am I setting up my wife for success, my kids for success, my business for success? That going through this, you feel like gave you some clarity that you wouldn't have had otherwise?
I don't know if I have any of those big takeaways yet. I keep waiting for that like train or that truck to hit me with, this is what you learned from this scenario. It's been a lot of little things. And I was reminded of one thing that came up in, it's either marriage counseling or a small group we were in or something. And somebody said something about how marriage is never 50-50. It could be 90-10 or it could be 60-40. And hopefully over the span of your marriage, it ends up being 50-50. But that was a time where it was very much 90-10. I was 10%. And it's given me a little bit of inspiration to make up for some of that lost time and energy, and support Maggie now as she's trying to transition in her business or in her side of the business. So just realizing that it's never really 50-50. Same thing with kids. There's certain times you can devote more to spending time with them, and certain times you have to devote to your wife or your business, and hopefully it all evens out over the course of their lives, their young lives.
Totally. I think too, and I think this is becoming more, right? I feel like I'm seeing more like authors, kind of like entrepreneurial space or productivity space, where I think the whole idea of like this constant work-life balance is somewhat of a myth, and it's typically not the best scenario for success, where typically it's like counterbalance, like going hard for a period that is unbalanced, like being unbalanced intentionally for a period that allows some counterbalance the other way. Like building your business, it's like yeah, there's going to be times where, yeah, of course, writing those SOPs is going to suck. Making that hire is going to be a risk or whatnot. And not that you need to go crazy, but there can be these times where you need to lean into it, and it can kind of counterbalance. I think I've experienced that in family stuff too. It's like you have periods where you're going hot and heavy. You hope that balances out at some point.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's a relatively new phenomenon, pretty much since the Industrial Revolution, since Henry Ford built the 40-hour work week. Before that, it was, hey, I need to put my hunting band together and we're going to go kill 10 elk in 3 days and go all out, and then we'll go back to camp and chill for a week or whatever. It was
Yeah.
very much more task based, not a balance of here's work, here's life. It was all combined.
Totally. I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it was like at the signing of at the ratification of the Constitution of the United States or something, like 85% of the labor force were like entrepreneurs. So it was like self-employment was the thing. And there weren't these jobs where you're clocking in, clocking out. It's like you're making a living. Like you kind of have to make a living. You have to do what you got to do. So it's interesting, just even how we think about that. What do you think? Again, as I'm hearing you explain your experience, it was like very grateful for a lot of the work that you guys had done leading up to it. What do you what would be your encouragement to business owners that they don't have this experience? Should they be thinking about? What should they be planning for? Like, yeah, how would you encourage folks to be prepared for something like this?
One of the best ways to prepare for it is to actually do it. Like, don't get sick, but
Oh, sure.
test it with taking one of those weekly vacations once a year where you really do unplug. Not a working vacation, but set your team up before you leave. Take that time and energy the week before. Say, this is what you do if this happens. This is what you do if this happens. I'm out for the week. Unless somebody dies or there's a safety emergency, don't call me. That's a great way to test that. And you can start doing that a couple times a year, or extending it, or say, hey, I'm going to do a week where I'm totally unplugged, and then a week I'm still going to be gone, but I'll fill in where is needed. And that's a great way to intentionally stress test your business.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Kind of, how can you manufacture that? How can you? It's kind of like you hire a salesperson. It's like do a buddy bid, shadow them or something. It's like
Because you don't know what you need to fix until you know what's broken. You can spend all this time trying to build the standards, the SOPs, the communication protocols, but if you're fixing something that's not even broken, then what are you really spending your energy at?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Just to underscore that, I'm reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk right now, and one of a thing that has contributed to a lot of his success in fixing things you didn't know you could fix was him kind of setting unrealistic timelines to get stuff done. For no other reason than he just wanted it done faster. Like he feels that he kind of self-applies the sense of urgency. Or same thing with cost. It's kind of like, I don't want it to cost that much. Make it cost half that, and just forcing that on the business. And it's a little bit of his team's, it's a little bit of a crucible. But they've revolutionized a lot of different things, like things that we thought, oh, it has to cost this, or it has to take this much time. If you artificially apply that pressure, you can find things that you wouldn't otherwise. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Curious, what's kind of on the horizon now? Like, what does the future look like for your business? Where are things headed with Harpeth? And I don't know if like the past year has changed any of that, or maybe caused you to just double down on, let's continue on the path. How are you thinking about the future?
It's funny. One of our business coaches, or our main business coach, he says, "I'm going to stop asking you what your revenue goals are because we keep exceeding them." We do the, the 1 3 5 year traction kind of thing, and we've always exceeded our revenue goals. And yes, it's smart to have those, but so much of what we've done has been driven by our customers and our people. So if we continue to hire good people and continue to have good customers, our growth precipitates from that. And that's been the case. So we're hiring another salesperson, business development role here towards the end of this year, and that's just gonna that incrementally adds another $2 to $3 million in revenue, and we follow in with the production side of that, and we've got the infrastructure, the operations in place. So incrementally growing those $2 to $3 million chunks is not that much of a stress anymore, probably until we get in the mid-teens, high teen area. So we'll probably see what that feels like and ride out there for a while. And then the goal becomes to, develop the leadership where Maggie can step out of running more of the day to day. She still has her hands in a few projects with clients that are kind of legacy clients. So moving towards eliminating that role for her. And that can't happen overnight because we need to see those clients and those projects through. But that's the way we're heading.
How do you guys think about growth? And I know you guys are, down to earth human beings that, grounded. You're not trying to get as rich as humanly possible. I know that about you guys. How do you think about growing your business when you don't have to, maybe? Like,
Yeah.
like what's the motivation now? Or how do you know what I mean? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yes, that's very interesting. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And the two words that keep coming back in that are stewardship and impact. And stewardship, yes, is a financial term typically, but it can also be people capital. So how can I develop my next level of leaders so that they can grow in this company? Most people kind of figure they get stuck in a small business at a certain point, but I think there's more room for people to grow, whether that's through partnerships or ownership or phantom stock or just straight promotion. When you get to a certain size, you can provide that opportunity. So that's really kind of where I'm focusing my energy now. And then just the fact that people keep the growth is so unintentional. That I don't mean it that way, but our customers keep coming back and asking for more. Means that we're doing something right, and we got to serve them.
I mean, I know that not everybody's having that same experience of the growth is just kind of happening. And I know that you're very connected in the industry. You rub shoulders with a lot of business owners. Do you feel like there's something that you guys are focused on that you maybe think other business owners are not focused on enough, that you think leads to that kind of revenue growth, like that kind of intentional but unintentional like revenue growth? That's like, because what I'm hearing is your revenue growth is downstream from something else, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think that source is that you think some other business owners, if they want to grow, they might do well to pay more attention to?
Yeah. Oversimplified in two things. It's relationships and product. So we have a very unique product in that we can do very weird things at scale. There's tons of people that can do weird things. There's tons of people that can do scale. We unfortunately have figured out how to do weird things at scale. It's not always easy. And then we really do, we take our marketing dollars and put that into relationships. So our cost of marketing is very low on a P&L, but there's a lot of time and money and energy spent in networking events, in community involvement, in just the normal boots on the ground type relationship stuff that pays dividends in the long run. It's hard to turn on like if you need work, it's hard to turn that spigot on. It's a long-term play. So we do have traditional channels that we use when we need to turn that faucet on, so to speak, but that typically does not reveal our ideal client.
Sure. More the relationship, the long-term stuff.
Yep.
That's what emerges that, yeah. And now I'm curious, like, what are some of the weird stuff that you guys do at scale? Like, or maybe give me an example. Like, what does that look like?
So it's a lot of the high-end finishes, the decorative finishes, where there's it's the stereotypical fine paints of Europe stuff, but then there's a lot of lime washes and custom color. It's people know what I'm talking about, but we can do it with 30 people and not just two craftspeople. So when we'll do a commercial project that has like something like this behind me here, where it's 20,000 square feet of wall, and you need to have 10 guys doing that, not two, and we have those capabilities.
What's helped you scale what, and maybe the value there that you're tapping into is figuring out how to scale something that maybe previously seemed unscalable. Is there anything that, I don't know, is there like an assumption that you challenged or a process that you implemented that you feel like helps you scale some of those higher end things?
Yeah, it became like how do we train this? And we've got some of our subcontractor partners that really wanted to engage in that training with us and say, "Hey, you are good at this as the leader. Now I need you to get 10 of your people good at this. How can we support you to do that?" And giving them that opportunity where they don't feel scared to go out there and train some of this unique stuff. Or it doesn't even have to be unique. It could just be more high-end, higher quality finishes that they used to have the perception like, I need to be the one doing this, where we would push back and say, slow down, take the time. You have 10 people on your team. Let's get half of them very good at this stuff over the next 3 months.
That's great. And even that goes back to relationship focus, I think, too.
Yeah.
Having a sub relationship where you can have that kind of dialogue. Hey, how can we create more opportunity for you? Here's the opportunity. How can we support you? That's great.
Yep.
On the relationship building side of things, what has been, I feel like too, there's always like, what's new, like new tactics, and then the tried and true. Do you feel like the longer, you guys get into your business, do you feel like you're finding new ways of opening up relationships, or do you find yourself, you guys are just finding that you double down on the tried and true methods?
Yeah, it's probably just the tried and true methods. There's not much. I guess the only one that maybe is new is being very intentional with social media, not from a advertising standpoint, but from a connection standpoint. Justin,
What does that look like?
Justin on my team is really good about just like sending a DM to a designer and be like, "Man, that looks awesome." Just leave it there, and then 3 months later, jump in again and say, "Wow, we love those kind of projects. That looks amazing." And then eventually getting to they'll ask us like, "Oh yeah, we see what you're doing. Like, let's partner on something." So using social media in a very direct way has been huge for us. And then everybody in our company is required to be in some sort of networking group, whether that's, it could be a BNI, or on the commercial, we've got these ABC groups. There's women in construction groups here in Nashville. There's Maggie was just at an ASID event last night. Like, everybody from our admin to me and Maggie are required to be in something like that. So you get a lot of tentacles out there, and it just starts multiplying really quickly.
That's great. I love that. Because too, oftentimes that's, Yeah, it can be refreshing for staff to go to something like that, right? They learn something.
Yep.
They feel like if somebody's responsible for bringing opportunity into the door, that always feels fun. That even if you're not a salesperson,
Yep.
and so I think that's a great idea, is just making the biz dev kind of a company culture rather than just somebody's job.
Yep.
That's cool. That's great. Awesome, man. Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap. I really appreciate you making the time and sharing. And if more of those big insights, or that truck comes and hits you with this is what you learned, or I look forward to that. I would want to tap into that. Always appreciate your insights and thoughts. And again, very grateful you're doing well. Your family is, like, you and Maggie are very important people to the industry. Your talent, the talent you bring, the perspective, the generosity, the heart. Grateful that you guys are doing well. So thanks for the time today, man.
Nice words. Thank you. And if anybody has any further questions or wants to contact me, you can find me on the internet. Easy
Awesome.
to find. Instagram,
Love
Facebook, email. I'm out there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. Talk again soon.
Yep. See ya.